Cheney's got shots fired on their person with a weapon call.
So here's my question to you. How many shootings does the Cheney Police Department have? How many?
Sir, I don't know, but I know across the public, in general.
What's that?
In general,
Okay.
as a citizen, I'm 8 times more likely to be shot by a police officer than a police officer is by a member of the public. So I'm at a higher risk.
Thanks for joining Questionable Authority again. I want to do a story on one of the cops we had contact with since this channel was started. Officer Campbell had some issues with us when we visited Cheney, Washington for a First Amendment audit. Our experience was not horrible with Campbell, and in the end, we left on decent terms, mainly because we de-escalated the situation. I'm highlighting this order follower and showing some footage of him because he was involved in an officer-involved shooting on September 3rd in Cheney. I'm going to start off by playing a few clips of how our corporate-run media outlets are handling the reporting of this shooting. Like usual, most of our corporate or mainstream media does not really investigate other than to ask a few questions about the circumstances, then simply pass whatever the police say on as fact. I know officers and officials are very reluctant to give out information until the official marketing plan, report of the investigation is complete. Now see what corporate media is saying about this man's death, then listen to me break it down with parts of a conversation Republic and I had with Officer Campbell, the senior officer involved in the shooting. Guys, I know this is a controversial subject and not easy to discuss. If things are to change and get better, these kinds of conversations must take place. Please leave a comment with your thoughts, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with everyone you know.
He was armed at the time of the shooting, and the officers took action to stop his attack. There was a first aid immediately given to him, and he was subsequently pronounced dead at the scene.
And I'm sorry, did you say that was Eastern Washington Campus Police or Cheney Police?
Both. The Eastern Washington University Police responded to assist Cheney Police Department, so they were on scene at the time of the incident.
Do you know which department fired?
Cheney Police Department.
Do you have an ID on the suspect yet?
No.
And you said he was armed. Was that just the knife, or did he also have a gun on it?
Armed with a knife.
Just armed with a knife.
Have y'all heard from residents or any people who live around the area? Have they been commenting?
I spoke to a store employee. They said that one or two of the bullets might have went in through the wall. They had some clothes. Can you comment on that at all?
No, I haven't seen the crime scene. I haven't been in the crime scene.
So was it just one round that was fired, or were there multiple
No, there were
rounds?
several rounds fired. And at this time, it's still under investigation how many.
His life. The preliminary investigation reveals that about 11:40 last night, officers from the Cheney Police Department and Eastern Washington University Police Department responded to a disorderly person armed with a knife.
According to police, the man with the knife began acting aggressive to officers and refused to drop his weapon, at which point 3 Cheney police officers fired their weapons.
I saw cops. They had their hands out in front of them with like guns, and I was like, oh man, like that's guns, like those were gunshots. My coworker was like, I just got shot at, and I was like, what are you talking about? And we looked up, and there was like, she pointed at it, and there was a hole in the wall, and we're like, what? And we didn't know where the bullet went initially, but like after looking around for a bit, we noticed it was like in the ceiling, so it had kind of jutted upwards, but like it was like right above where she had been standing.
We hear that when police arrived, the man was armed with the knife, and they tried to de-escalate the situation, tried to get him to drop the knife, but when he refused and started charging at police, that is when they say they had to fire.
He's been identified by the Spokane County Medical Examiner as 40-year-old Stephen Anderson. Police say he was armed with a knife and threatened officers. Now a close friend of Anderson says none of that makes sense.
He didn't obey their orders to drop the knife. He aggressed toward them. They fired their weapons.
Steve was just a very kind-hearted person.
John Wilson has been Anderson's best friend since first grade. They talked on the phone 2 hours before Anderson died.
He seemed to be in good spirits. We were just having a normal conversation.
Wilson says he was shocked and confused when he learned his friend was dead.
None of it fits. None of it makes any sense at all. I don't understand this.
Wilson does believe Anderson had a knife on him.
He had a knife collection ever since we were little kids. He liked knives. He always had a knife on him.
But he doesn't think that his best friend would ever use it to hurt anyone.
He didn't use it as a weapon. He carried it as a tool. It was like carrying your wallet.
Now you've seen what the local news has to say about this officer-involved shooting. Let me give you an update. The names of the officers involved and the victim have been released. There were 3 order followers from Cheney PD and 1 from Eastern Washington University PD that responded to a 911 call for a disorderly man with a knife. That man was Steve L. Anderson, a 40-year-old father of 2. The 3 Cheney police officers who fired their weapons were Zebulon Campbell with 12 years on the force, Nicole Burbridge with 10 months on the force, and Reserve Officer Nicholas Horn with the department approximately a year as a volunteer reserve officer. I want to show you some footage of a conversation Republic and I had with Officer Zebulon Campbell. Neither of us were surprised to find out this order follower was one of the ones on scene pulling the trigger late on September 3rd, 2018. My guess, based on the experience of the 3 officers involved, Campbell was the leader. Only the local newspaper, the Spokesman-Review, reported much more than just repeating what the captain from Cheney PD had to say at a conference early in the morning hours of the investigation. Because it's what I do, I'm going to take a deeper look and question things just a little more, especially knowing Republic and I had quite an experience and conversation with Campbell. If you want to see the full conversation, it was about 15 minutes long and took place during an audit of the Cheney Police Department and Post Office. The conversation took place January 31st, 2018. A link to that video and the timestamp of the conversation is in the description. I encourage you to check it out. Without seeing any footage of the shooting and only going off the various reports, it sounds to me like the victim didn't follow orders given to him by the officers. After not dropping his knife in response to their commands and then moving towards the officers, Anderson was shot several times. Let me say before anything else, I believe in the principle of non-aggression. Simply put, if you are not harming me or my property in any way, I have no justified reason to aggress you. That said, I understand how a man moving towards you with a knife can be construed as an aggressive manner or move. Would you or I be justified if we engaged in conversation with the victim, knowing he was wielding a knife? Then, if he didn't drop the knife, but maybe even started walking towards you or I, because we had now engaged him by yelling to come out and drop the knife, possibly even with our gun drawn, you or I decide to shoot that man. What do you think would happen in the system we currently have? Well, that didn't happen, so we will never know. Instead, we got 3 members of a gang confronting what they were told was a disorderly man with a knife. Call these 3 whatever label you want: a gang, law enforcement, cops, pigs. The only thing that really matters is they are given guns, badges, and training by the state. The training they receive doesn't teach them to protect and serve like we are conditioned to believe. No, they are trained to protect the corporate interests of their rulers. When in the field, they are trained to constantly worry about officer safety. They are trained there is a war on cops. The numbers, which you'll see me bring up with Campbell, just don't line up with this war. Anderson was deemed a threat by not immediately dropping his weapon and following orders. Without body cameras, we really only know what these order followers tell us. Again, we do know by not following orders, Anderson was deemed a threat. Then, by not dropping his knife, he was an immediate danger to officer safety, and the use of force was justified. That is how a prosecutor will look at it, and those are the instructions the judge will give a jury if it goes to trial. To a growing population of the public who believe these order followers are here to protect and serve us, it is confusing. 3 law enforcement officers trained to handle these situations. They have non-lethal resources, time, and numbers available. Yet, because orders, lawful or unlawful, weren't followed, bang! Steve Anderson, a 40-year-old father of 2, is dead. Now let's take a deeper look into one of the perpetrators. Officer Campbell, of the 3, has the most experience and is a training officer. Again, these are just clips from our entire conversation. In the conversation, Campbell admits we are breaking no laws. It was me performing the lawful activity of walking through a public parking lot with a camera in my hands that made him contact us and escalate the situation. Watch and leave a comment. What do you think? Does Campbell escalate or de-escalate the situation to get his answers? Think about how his attitude may play into the situation with Steve Anderson. Maybe Steve was threatened and or scared by this attitude and didn't know how to handle it. I've had 3 officers around me, and even with no guns drawn, in a calm situation, they can be intimidating.
Pretty good.
What are you up to today?
Public photography.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
That's cool. You photographing.
Huh?
What are you taking photos of?
You right now.
How come?
Because you just pulled up right in front of me.
Okay.
Awfully aggressively, I might add. Kind of quick, yeah.
How's that aggressive?
Well, you just pulled right in front of a pedestrian. It just seemed kind of...
You're just standing.
Yeah, I know. It just seemed kind of...
It doesn't really work that way.
What's your name, sir? Campbell?
Your name?
You're not going to be sharing that.
Well, I'm not going to give you mine.
It's Campbell. I can see it.
Okay, yeah. You're absolutely right. You can film all you want as long as you're on the city property on the sidewalk.
I understand the rules.
Parking lot, though, we're across the street illegally.
That's alley.
The public.
That's an alley that goes behind people's houses right there.
Once you step into our parking lot.
Sir, those are poles right there that the city takes care of and maintains, which means there's an easement. Right, which means that it's public easement and it's public access and there's no restriction.
In the alleyway.
Right, I can walk straight through here.
You're right, you can.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I understand.
Well, here's what I'm going to ask that you do. Please film all you like. We have no problem with that.
Okay.
However, I ask you to stay out of the street and stay off private property.
I'm 46 years old. I've made it this far with never once having another man try and tell me where to walk. So thank you, though, for that instruction.
Well, no, I'm asking you to stay out of the street.
Okay.
I'm not telling you anything. Right?
Okay, well, it seems I'd like you to go because I'd like to walk through here because I don't need instruction on where to walk. Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, I'll hold right here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
At this point, Republic decided to walk away. Campbell hadn't done anything to de-escalate, and his attempts to alleviate his fears for the safety of his fellow officers through interrogation didn't work. Do you think his attitude and approach would calm down somebody already upset? Not ready to stop with his surveillance and investigation of us, he then initiated contact with me.
I didn't ask for help. I'm fine.
You don't ask for help?
I didn't ask for help.
Okay. Well, I'm just asking you how you're doing today.
Doing fine.
Yeah? So do you want to talk to me?
I'm just out taking pictures, man.
There's no reason to talk to him. He's not going to tell you his name.
No, I'm asking if you want to talk to me. I'll talk with you.
What's your name and badge number?
My name is Campbell. Yeah, if you want to talk to me, come over here. I'll gladly tell you my badge number, but...
You won't just, as a public servant, you won't just tell a member of the public when they ask?
Well, you're being kind of sketchy about it.
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I don't really trust police officers. Why would I trust you? You guys shoot us at the rate 8 times the time that we shoot you. You get nervous and you shoot us.
Have you been shot?
Oh, wow. Jesus. Another brilliant argument.
I'm telling you why, as a member of the public, I don't trust law enforcement.
Okay. So
I'm telling you why, instead of being understanding and trying to build trust, you're argumentative. That's all I'm saying. You're being argumentative.
Very.
So here's my question to you. How many shootings has the Cheney Police Department had? How many?
Sir, I don't know, but I know across the public, in general.
What's that?
In general.
Okay.
As a citizen, I'm 8 times more likely to be shot by a police officer than a police officer is by a member of the public. So I'm at a higher risk.
My sources are listed on the screen and links are in the description. These numbers are from 2016, but they haven't really changed. In 2016, the FBI reported 118 in-line of duty law enforcement deaths. The same year, the Washington Post reported 963 civilians killed by police. 963 over 118 is 8.16, so civilians are 8 times more likely to die than law enforcement in any given contact. Keep in mind, 2016 was an abnormally high year for cops to be shot by civilians, with 5 being executed in Dallas at one time. However, if you look into the FBI numbers a little more, 52 of the officers' deaths were accidental, and most of those were by vehicle, most of which were their own. If you take that into account, the ratio is even higher.
Coming out here and talking to you, I'm at 8 times more of a risk for dying. So I'm putting myself at risk. So I'm telling you that, and instead of putting me at ease and de-escalating, you're being argumentative. You guys didn't make any contact with us. We're just here taking pictures.
Until you enter our parking lot. That's why I
Is
decided.
this not a public alleyway through here? A power line with public easement?
It's a parking lot.
I walked right through the alleyway. I walked right through. You haven't asked anybody else questions here today. I've seen people walk in and out of here. I haven't seen anybody else be asked questions. Just you.
Where's somebody else at that I can talk to?
I've been here for maybe 20 minutes taking pictures, went over to the post office. I saw people in and out of here. I saw other officers while people were walking up. Nobody else got asked a question.
Okay.
They were on public doing perfectly legal activities, just like I am.
Just like you are.
But nobody else got harassed by the police, just me.
Once again, you're not.
I don't know that
I don't want to talk to you. This is a non-consensual conversation, sir.
I told you can leave at any point.
I don't necessarily agree it's harassing, but you're definitely rolled up aggressive, dude. And if you don't,
I did, but that's your call.
okay, and what the deal is, perception of the citizens actually matters, and the fact that you don't seem to care about that, it sucks.
Order followers like Campbell are a problem. His salary is paid with money stolen through taxes. I hate to say this at the risk of angering those on the right, but it's socialized security. The problem is, it provides no security to the people who pay for it. He should be looking to de-escalate situations and help those he serves. It seems clear to me from our interaction, he follows his training well, putting us all into a category based on threat, then dealing with us using appropriate force. He doesn't think of how to help an individual like Anderson. Campbell just follows his training. As soon as he perceived a threat to officer safety from a perp with a weapon, the only way in the mind of an order follower is to remove the threat. The most efficient way to do that is lethal force. My question, is that always the best answer? I hate to say it, but these so-called heroes know what they are signing up for, yet repeatedly, when the time to be a hero and shine comes up, they hide behind the cowardice of officer safety. Unfortunately, in far too many instances like this one, the result is loss of civilian life. I believe unnecessarily. A couple of more things before I let you go. These officers seem only to be concerned with their own safety, not keeping the public safe. Remember the workers inside Harvest Foods? They were dangerously close to some of the bullets being fired by police. In the clip played earlier from KXLY, one worker describes how a bullet had hit the wall near where a coworker was standing. According to a report in the Spokesman-Review, during the gunfire, Pettinghill said one of her coworkers was startled by falling drywall. One of the bullets apparently had pierced the wall at an upward angle and lodged itself in the ceiling above the woman's head. Does that sound like these order followers were looking out for the safety of the surrounding public, or only their own? Next, from an interview with the victim's friend, we actually are presented with the idea excessive force might have been used. One of the few times this is brought up by the media.
I feel like there definitely needs to be an investigation done, not only way outside of Steve's character, but also it seems like kind of pretty excessive force. The guy had a knife, and there's 3 police. I mean, haven't they heard of the sandbags, rubber bullets? The guns were absolutely not necessary. It just blows my mind.
Here is a screenshot of an article on SpokaneNews.com. It also includes some comments from Facebook. Looks like more in the community are questioning the official storyline. Will the team of independent agencies from the region really give Anderson a fair investigation? Will they really question whether or not lethal force was justified? Or will they just look to find a way to show how this is what law enforcement officers are trained to do? If you don't believe that happens, look up Philip Brailsford sometime. Tell me he didn't get away with murder of an innocent man because it fell within the guidelines of his training. I think law enforcement manages these officer-involved shootings and implements a well-thought-out marketing plan. In the first few clips from the news, you can see how local news just repeats what a law enforcement spokesman tells them. The last clip demonstrates more of the plan. This is how the cops and media will push character assassination, bringing out any skeletons in this victim's closet that might make him look bad.
And a search of court records shows Anderson has been investigated for burglary and domestic violence in the past.
Digging just a little deeper reveals Anderson has been out of any trouble for over a decade, and they were misdemeanors. It's almost like this guy decided he needed to start making better choices and be a good father. The cops and their marketing machine will not let you think that. Instead, they will drag his name and character through the mud to gain public favor. Guys, I hope you liked this video. Links to all of my sources are in the description, as well as a link to our full conversation with Campbell. If you feel the need to address your concerns with Cheney PD, you can find them on Facebook. While you're there, check us out on Facebook and additional platforms like BitChute and Steemit. Links to all questionable authority platforms are in the description as well. Thanks for checking out another Questionable Authority video. Feel free to share our content with everyone you know to get the word out. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook as well to stay connected. Links are in the description and on the screen now. Until next time, question everything and be a positive influence on somebody's life each and every day. It's as simple as a smile as you pass by.